Support for Ask a Christian Counselor comes from Faithful Counseling, which provides online professional counseling from a biblical perspective. Speak with a Christian licensed therapist today from the comfort of your home or anywhere you are on the go. For 10% off your first month, visit faithfulcounseling.com/ACC.
On today's show, understanding your personality.
This is Ask a Christian Counselor, where you can receive solid, practical, and biblical answers on whatever personal or relational issue you are facing. Tress Adamus is a master's level pastoral counselor in Phoenix, Arizona. Here's Tress.
My name is Tress, and welcome to the show. Well, this is actually one of our most listened to episodes. And at first you may be thinking, well, how do you know that? You're recording it, which is true. What I mean by that is this is actually, I guess, what you would call a re-upload or a recreation of a previous episode, which was on personality, where we talked about our personality assessment, which is the Christian DISC. And it has consistently always been our most popular episode. And the reason why I decided to redo it was because we have changed a lot in regard to our resources on personality. So I want to make sure that those are up to date. But we're going to talk about the same exact things that we've talked about in that original episode. So I don't see the future. I'm not looking at a crystal ball right here, but just looking at the stats over the last 6 months from the last time we recorded this topic. This has been obviously the topic that most people or most of our listeners are interested in. And so as a result, we have really amped up a lot of our resources on personality. There aren't a whole lot of Christian resources on personality, which I find very interesting. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just to kind of give you an update on the resources that we have had a personality assessment called the Christian DISC for a few years, and it's changed its name, it's changed its scope over the years. Now it is a trademarked, unique personality assessment, a unique version of what is known as the DISC profile that is specifically designed for Christian counseling and ministry. And it's changed over the years. Before it was something really small. I originally just had it as really just a download. You had to download a PDF and it would calculate everything, but it didn't always work. And people wanted like a website that they could log into and get a report that was uniquely generated for them. And I knew that was later on down the road. So our attempts at creating a personality assessment have been rudimentary, really, but now I would pit our version of the DISC against any other DISC profile out there on the internet. We have a membership site where you can sign up for a single-use assessment and have access to it for 24 hours. We also have memberships where you can have access to it for a year. So it's really come a long way, and I'm really excited about it. If you have never taken like an actual personality test, I would encourage you to consider it. And I'm not talking about just those little BuzzFeed personality tests that talk about, what Harry Potter character are you? Yeah, those are fun. We're talking about actual assessments that really go deep and give a lot of feedback on what makes you unique as a person in regard to how you think and how you interact with the world. And we have a free version of the Christian DISC that is totally free to take. If you just go to our website, christianpersonalitytest.com. That's the URL, christianpersonalitytest.com. You can see that there's a link at the top where you can sign up to take the free version. And as for the actual assessment, because the free one's only about 12 questions, just to kind of give you just a taste of what the assessment is like, and it only tells you your top scoring type. Usually people score primarily in one of the 4 major types, and then they have a secondary type that usually complements that. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. The full assessment really breaks down each of the 4 personality types and how you score in all of them. But we have the original version. The Christian DISC is our faith-based version. That is really our gold standard. I guess you could say that is the primary product. But we also have a non-faith version, which we just call the classic DISC, because we know that we have people that use it in contexts where they may not be able to use the faith-based aspects. And that was just really out of just in response to user demand. We just had people keep asking us, hey, can you make a version of the DISC profile that I can use in my school or at work? And so we do have a non-faith version that doesn't have the spiritual integration in there. But the main Christian DISC, that's the one that is unique and has specifically integrated scriptures and biblical figures for each of the personality types. And if you are interested in essentially buying assessments in bulk, we did try selling, in groups of 10 different assessments, but I realized, why don't we just have a membership program where you just have complete 100% unlimited access to the assessment, and you can use it as much as you want within your organization. So now I just decided, let's just do a membership. So we have the option of where you can just buy one, or you can just sign up for a 1-year membership and then just use it as much as you possibly can or want within your ministry or your work. So, and the big announcement is that our certification program is finally done. I had mentioned a few times in previous episodes how we were working on it. I was actually on the field with my dad recording some of the videos, but it is completely done. It's a 3-hour training where you can become a certified Christian DISC facilitator. So that is available as well. So, what makes this different? What makes the Christian DISC different? Well, there are so many different personality assessments, and I think the most popular or well-known one is the Myers-Briggs, and that splits personality into 16 different types. It has 16 different personality types that it profiles, and I've used that one before. That was probably the first personality assessment that I had ever taken. I had took it in high school when I was in youth group, and it was very interesting. And most people have probably taken that one at school or even church. But the thing I notice about that one is that it really only teaches you about your own personality type. And I noticed that also people that are very interested in the Myers-Briggs is they are very much interested in learning about themselves, reading about themselves, but they don't know anything about the other 15 types. And I say that just because I did the same thing. I knew all about mine, but I didn't know anything about all the other ones. And I think a lot of it is just that it's difficult to learn 15 other types that you may not understand at all. And so what makes the DISC different is that there's just 4 major types, and it is much easier to learn about the other 3 types after you score in 1 or maybe 2, but it's just easier to learn about all 4 versus having to learn 16. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Myers-Briggs is actually built on top of the DISC profile. So the DISC profile has been around for a very long time. Actually, for thousands of years. It actually has its roots in ancient Greece. It was devised by Hippocrates, and it kind of fell out of disuse for a long time and was rediscovered during the 19th century when psychology was really beginning to develop. And William Marston did a lot of work on it and modernized it and added different elements such as introversion and extroversion and created the modern DISC as we know it today. And it has been used in more corporate settings for decades. And so a lot of corporations will use it in their training. There are a lot of coaches that use it when they coach, professionals. And so it's very well known and widely used within the corporate world. But the Christian DISC is different because it is specifically designed for Christian counseling and for ministry, and it puts a higher emphasis on emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, that is a term that was really coined by Daniel Coleman. He wrote a book just called Emotional Intelligence. And there's been a lot of research recently about emotional intelligence, and what it is it's just the ability to emotionally connect with other people. Some people say that it is a higher indicator of success than IQ. In fact, they call it just EQ. but that your EQ is more important than your IQ, because your ability to connect with other people is more important than just what you know individually. But anyway, so he talks about there's like 5 different aspects of emotional intelligence, and they include things like self-awareness, self-regulation, which is the ability to manage your emotions, internal motivation, which means that you are motivated by deeper things beyond money and just external things like status and monetary success, but you're actually internally motivated by more important things like your relationship with your family, having a relationship with God. Just there are deeper, more moral things that motivate you. So self-awareness, just the ability to know yourself. Self-regulation, the ability to recognize and manage emotion. Internal motivation, also social skills. And then empathy, the ability to connect with other people and understand what they're feeling and what they're going through. So I just kind of threw that out. But that's in the certification course. We go a lot more into emotional intelligence. But it is one of the elements that is in just the regular Christian DISC reports. There is a lot in there about just the ways that each personality type tends to experience and express emotions. And what we do is we talk about the strengths, which is usually what most people are interested in. They kind of want to know what makes them unique and ultimately better than maybe other people. But it talks about weaknesses, but we call them growth areas, areas where you can grow that tend to be kind of weaker areas in regard to your temperament, but that can still be worked on and strengthened. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to play a clip from a video that we created that talk about the strengths and the growth areas for all 4 types. But all those things can be changed, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that personality can change for the better. And that's something that we definitely emphasize with the Christian DISC is, hey, these are your natural strengths, and here are your natural weaknesses, but those natural weaknesses and those natural strengths can actually be enhanced and strengthened. The strengths and the weaknesses can be strengthened over time. And so you can actually improve your character. So personality is just not the static thing. There are some things that we are, I think, born with, inclinations. This is what you would call your temperament. But your character is what changes over time in response to how you're raised and what you're taught growing up and the experiences you've gone through. So, but yeah, there's different aspects of personality, but the Christian DISC addresses those things. And we're selling a lot of these things, which is very exciting because this is something that I've been working on for a long time. So just the fact that it is beginning to enrich the lives of other people is very, very much a blessing to me.So I think one of the questions that come up is, why learn about personality? Shouldn't I just focus on God and other people? Well, yes, but at the same time, if you learn more about yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, it allows you to serve other people and to serve the church and serve God much more fully. It increases things like confidence and self-esteem. And the thing, again, about the Christian DISC is it teaches you not just about yourself, it teaches you about other people as well. So it can help churches and groups understand one another and interact with one another more effectively. Because one thing that comes up, and this is true especially in couples counseling, and I had mentioned this in a previous podcast, is that we tend to moralize our preferences, and that tends to be the breakdown in a lot of communication. And this is true just in churches, between couples, between families, between workplaces. A majority of the clashes that happen have to do with personality clashes because we tend to moralize the differences that we have with one another when they may not be moralizable, if you will. They're just differences. So just because somebody is more quiet, more withdrawn, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're rude. It's just that they tend to reserve their energy more specifically for certain people and for certain situations. So it's just harder for them to connect the way that an extrovert does. Or just because an extrovert is outgoing doesn't mean that they're rude. So while there are certain things that are obviously morally wrong, there are certain things like that are just personality quirks and differences that are not morally wrong. And I think we should be aware of how we come across to other people. But just learning those differences really helps to prevent a lot of that confusion that happens within groups when people are trying to understand one another and where they're trying to interact with one another. And the Christian Disc not only talks about the 4 personality types, it talks about how they relate to one another. And so when you score in one personality type, it shows you how your personality types interacts with the other personality types and how they interact with you, and where there can often be some of those miscommunications that happen. But I want to go ahead and play a clip from a video that we created that just gives an overview of all 4 types. It talks about the natural strengths and the natural weaknesses, or what we call growth areas. And this is an overview of the 4 personality types. There are 4 major personality types that are profiled by the Christian Disc assessment, and each of the 4 types starts with a letter that makes up the acronym DISC. The first type is the D, which is dominant, and this is also known as the choleric type, and the animal that is represented by this type is the lion. So according to research done in 2011 by TTI Performance Systems, 19% of the world population scores as dominant, and this was based on a survey of 17,382 people. And so the strengths of the dominant type are that these people usually tend to be very excellent leaders. They are very personable. They have excellent skills for socializing. They tend to be optimistic, and they have a very sharp mind. Now, each type has natural strengths, and they also have weaknesses, or what the Christian Disc terms as growth areas. And so some of the growth areas for this type tend to be that they can be prone to anger. They can be tempted to overexert their control. They may use people to attain their own goals. They can be headstrong or stubborn, even unwilling to delegate authority. The next type is the I, which is the influencing type, also known as the sanguine type, and the animal that signifies this type is the otter. According to the same research cited earlier, 32% of the world population is influencing. So what are the strengths of the influencing type? They tend to be very social, entertaining, outgoing, very responsive to the emotional needs of others, and they tend to be very friendly. So what are some of the growth areas? This type can be tempted more with destructive behavior. They can be very impulsive. They tend to not be very organized. They can be undisciplined and prone to exaggerate in order to try to impress other people. The third type is the steady type. 35% of the population scores as this type. So this is actually the top scoring type. Majority of the world population tends to be the steady type, also known as the phlegmatic type. And the animal that signifies this one is the golden retriever. So the strengths of this type are that they tend to be very calm and easygoing. They tend to be peacemakers. They're even-tempered. They're practical, and they tend to be very good under pressure. They can take on a lot of high-pressure environments, whether it's at home or in the workplace. And the growth areas of this type center on the fact that they can be tempted to compromise. They can be tempted to also avoid confrontation out of a desire not to upset other people when they probably should be assertive. They can be unexpressive, they can be hesitant to share their opinion, and that can lead to resentment. Now, the final fourth type is the compliant type, also known as the melancholic type, and the animal that goes with this one is the beaver. So 14% of the world population scores as this type, which actually makes it the most rare of the 4 major types. So the strengths of the compliant type is they tend to be very creative, insightful, intelligent, they make excellent supervisors, they are faithful and self-sacrificing. And some of the growth areas for this type include the fact that they can be judgmental, often be moody, they can struggle with low self-esteem, they may have a fear of rejection, and they can be very perfectionistic. And so that's an overview of all the major types, and if you have not taken the DISC assessment yet, I would highly encourage you to do that. So most people tend to be a blend of these major types. They tend to score the highest in one type, and then they have a secondary or two secondary types in addition with that one. All right, so there's your overview of the 4 major personality types. And what the Christian DISC measures is things like whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you are more of a people-oriented person or maybe more of a task-oriented person. Talks about and measures different relationship dynamics, and it has unique spiritual insights and scriptures for each of the types, and also biblical figures. I've had a few people say to me that was their favorite part of receiving a report on their type, was just learning what biblical figures in Scripture exemplified the type that they score the highest in. So we have the assessment available. We also have a membership. If you're interested in signing up for that, again, that gives you unlimited access for you and your organization for an entire year. And ultimately, if you're just interested and you're not sure, go ahead and just take the free version. Go to the website, christianpersonalitytest.com. Well, I want to remind each and every one of you that you are made in the image of God, and He loves you unconditionally. Walk in this knowledge and get support when you forget. God bless.